I am so glad you guys tuned into today's episode. We talk with Mitch Willis, who is a 2023 RAS Media Rookie of the Year finalist, as well as a Rookie of the Year at his own company. Mitch left a career in law enforcement in his late 40s to pursue a real estate career. He closed a whopping 29 transactions and almost $2.9 million in sales his first year, far exceeding his six-figure income goal. Hear from Mitch how he did it, how he utilized social media, and how he became a household name for real estate in his community.
Welcome to Unlocking Real Estate, My First Commission, where we dive into real stories, big wins, and early lessons learned from highly successful rookie real estate agents and brokers. This is the podcast where we explore how real estate transforms lives, one home at a time, by sitting down each week with a new agent or broker who has found incredible success in their first year. Your hosts are instructors and leaders at Colibri Real Estate School, one of the largest real estate educators in the nation, where we focus on helping people like you get started or find continued success in their careers.
Hello, and welcome to Unlocking Real Estate, My First Commission. I'm your host, Tina Lapp, and I've been in real estate education for over 30 years, helping individuals enter and thrive in their real estate careers.
And I'm Mara Madge. I've been a licensed broker for 20 years now, working and teaching pre-licensing in several states to up-and-coming agents.
We are here today with Mitch Willis. Mitch, will you take a moment to introduce yourself, where you live, and what company you're with?
Yeah, again, so my name is Mitch Willis, and I appreciate you guys having me on today. I live in the Florida Panhandle, which is between Tallahassee and Panama City Beach, in a small rural county called Liberty County in Bristol, Florida, and I work with LPT Realty.
Wonderful. And Mitch, what were you doing before you got into real estate?
So prior to that, I was a law enforcement officer. I was working at our local sheriff's office, had been there about 7 years, and had worked my way up into sergeant's position in investigations unit.
That's wonderful. Congratulations. It sounded like you had a great career going. So what inspired you to pursue a career in real estate?
So prior to being in law enforcement, me and my wife, we owned an Ace Hardware store that used to be my grandparents'. And that's what I grew up in, was in retail. So after being in law enforcement 7 years, I was approaching 50 years old. I think I was 48. And I told my wife, I said, I'm looking for a career, something that the harder I work, the more money I can make, the more I can, see the fruits of my labor. And I really enjoyed law enforcement because I could help people. But I also knew retirement was on the forefront coming. So I wanted something that I could make some serious money at. And so she mentioned real estate. And that's kind of what got the ball rolling with that.
So is that who inspired you? Did you talk to other people? Like, how did you finally decide to make that move? That's a big decision.
It was. And, and my wife, I love her and she's awesome. And she was the one who brought it to my attention, which was kind of odd because she's always like, I like something guaranteed income. And I was like, well, real estate's not guaranteed, but she encouraged me to reach out to other realtors. One of them was a friend of mine that used to work with our state law enforcement here. She had made the change, and she really talked it up. She said, Mitch, I know you, I've worked with you. I think you'd be good. And I talked to several other agents as well, and I just decided, well, that's the direction I'm going in.
That's great. A lot of my students, my pre-licensing students, are first responders. They're either, nurses, firefighters, or police officers. And the great thing about your type of career is that you have so many connections that are going to help you in terms of prospecting. So that's amazing. Can you walk us through the process, though, of how you got your real estate license? What were you doing right at that time? And how did you choose your school?
So, I was still working at the sheriff's office when I started that process. And so I started the school. And, of course, you're asking, how did I find the school? I really didn't have a way. Nobody gave me like a laid out plan or what school I should go to. So honestly, I went with the cheapest thing I could find. Looking back, that wasn't the smartest move to make. I just did one where, you just basically read through the course, took your end of course exam or end of chapter exam, and then you did your end of course exam. Now, when people ask me, I'm like, there's a lot of different schools out there, and I encourage them to either attend one in person, or if you can do something online where you have somebody teaching you, giving you experiences. But for me, I didn't know any better, so I went with like the cheapest thing I found out there, but I wouldn't want to do that again. I would do something different.
Yeah, it sounds like, you got through it, and there are many students that are making decisions about what school to go to. They're wondering, do I want to do this self-paced? Do I want to have a live instructor? And I find that many students, do the self-paced and thought maybe I should go with an instructor, or, they try certain schools and it doesn't work out. So that's fairly common. Would you say that maybe a piece of advice would be to look online, look at reviews, potentially look into live instructor classes?
Absolutely. Yeah, I highly encourage you, if you have the time, to take a live instructor class. That is the main thing because, I think during that, they're going to give advice, real life situations that happen, which is going to help you learn. Doing it like I did was very hard because, it was a lot of memorization on things. There was nothing to really apply it to. And so, definitely look online, find something that's live, or at least maybe some recordings or something that you can go back and watch somebody teaching it.
Absolutely. I can't agree more with how much memorization there is. I don't have to tell you, I'm sure you had flashcards and you were staying up late at night. On top of the memorization, there's just so many concepts that I feel like if you don't have any sort of background in real estate, having somebody actually explain them makes it a lot easier.
Absolutely.
Memorizing is one thing, but do you truly understand the concept? Outside of maybe feeling like you should have maybe gotten your education in a different way, did you face any other challenges with testing or studying or anything like that?
Yeah, no. So, I took my end of course exam, passed that, got to the state board, and I took, I don't remember what class it was, but it was just kind of like a remedial thing that really honed in getting ready for the state board. So I do encourage anybody going to take the state board to look for those types of classes that might have some follow-up training and studying material to get ready for that.
Absolutely. Our school teaches a grammar. I taught it for years. And it is great for anybody who is looking into licensing to find some sort of class you can attend 1 to 2 nights a week or something that is going to narrow down what's most important for that state exam. I feel like a lot of people in those upcoming weeks to that state exam really need to know for sure what's important and what's not as important, and so that they can triage their studying, stop the bleeding. And then there's additional things to know, but maybe not so important for the state exam. So I love that we talked about this, though, because anybody that wants to get into real estate is thinking, how do I get my license? Where do I get my education? And you've talked about some of the maybe cons of maybe going through a school or a process that made it a little bit more difficult. You did it, which is, I have to say, it's impressive. Anybody that does self-paced studies on their own, has no background in real estate, and then passes, props to you, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. So congratulations on getting past that state exam, right? That first barrier. At this point, were you still at the sheriff's office when you got through the test?
No, so I started studying in April, and then at the time I had some part-time work we were doing for a vacation rental company in Destin, Florida. Okay. So a position opened there, which I was like, I knew I was going to be leaving the sheriff's office anyway. Yeah. And so position open, and I was like, I think this is going to really help me with my career in real estate, because it was just putting me in contact and knowing the area a lot better and contact with a lot of other people. So I made the move and went to work with that vacation rental company. And that was in, I think, around May of that year, somewhere in there.
Okay.
And, yeah. So I took from May till October, I worked with that company. And then by October, things had really started picking up with my real estate. So I was able to leave that job and just been full-time real estate.
Okay. So after you passed your exam and you're doing this, what did you expect for your first year? And did your actual results kind of match your expectations?
So that is a good question. So I didn't really know what to expect. I started in July with a former brokerage, and So I went through July, and like I said, by October, I was doing good. So, and I believe it was January, they brought on a coach, and I met with him, and he said, Mitch, he says, how much money you think you want to make in the first year? And I was like, I have no idea. I said, maybe $50,000. And he said, he laughed at me. He was like, where did you come up with that number? And I said, well, I wasn't making a whole lot at the sheriff's office. So if I can make that and work from home, be my own boss, I'll be fine. And anyway, he told me, he said, listen, from now on, you're a six-figure agent. You don't think of yourself any less. And that year I made six figures, no problem. And my expectations were just kind of, it was funny because I just didn't really know what to expect. I just want to if I can make a little bit of money and be happy, I'll be all right. But yeah, it's turned out to be a really fun ride. So
that's awesome. Congratulations on that. Right. So let's dive a little deeper into how you made that happen. How long after obtaining your real estate license did you close your first transaction?
So I got my license in July. I think my first transaction closed in September.
Okay. Pretty quick. And what do you attribute that to, getting your first closing table pretty quickly?
So a couple things. I had an outstanding a broker. At that time, the brokerage I went with, it was a startup company, so it was very small, but she had a lot of experience. So I had a lot of one-on-one training with her. But it was a very funny story is that person, I got that lead through, at that time, they were offering Op City as leads. This guy was the first guy that I spoke to. And and the property was like a little $25,000 property. That's about an hour or so away from me. I talked to my broker. I was like, what do I do? And she said, well, go over there, show it to him. And I did through video because he was from Michigan. And he asked me, he said, so when I called him up, and this is, you just got to be real with people. And so I called him up. He said, Mitch, he says, okay, you showed me on video, but what do you think about that property? Do you think I could move some furniture in there and be all right? And I told him, I said, sir, if you move furniture in there, it's probably going to fall through the floor. And he laughed. He said, that's fine, Mitch, but I still want that property. I said, well, we're going to make it happen. And we got to the closing table. So definitely, just being real and honest with people. And me and him really developed a relationship because I got to know his why he wanted that property. And then just having amazing support. My broker at the time, she was awesome, and she walked me through every step of the process. So just having some good support.
Yeah, that's a great story or a funny experience from your early days. And you said you still keep in touch with that client?
I do. Yep. Matter of fact, just talked to him the other day. So yes, I do.
That's cool. And I'm glad his house didn't fall in on him.
No, he's got it remodeled. I haven't been over to look at it, but he is remodeled and living in it. So I said, well, as long as you happy, as long as you like it, I like it. So,
that's great. That's great.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
So, having a mentor or somebody you can shadow can change everything for your career. With students, I'm always telling them that one of the most important decisions is choosing their first broker because the level of training and support and whether or not you'll have a mentor really can change your trajectory. Even sometimes it's a make or break type of thing. And it sounds like you had this mentor in your broker, and sometimes the smaller brokerages can give you a little bit more one-on-one training, which, yep. I love that you received that. And, you're going to remember everything you learned from this broker, as I did when I was young from a broker, forever. But it sounds like, your first year was great. You're a six-figure agent. You very quickly had a closing, which is, great. But what challenges did you face in that first year? Because I'm sure that there were some, right?
Yeah, I think some of the challenges I faced were not so much from the business. It was a mental mindset. Here I was 48 years old, making a change into something that I've never done before. I always thought real estate was like a salesperson type thing, and I'm not a salesperson. But my first broker that I had, I told her, I said, listen, what am I going to do if I go to a listing? And, they asked me how many homes I've sold. I've never sold a home. And she was like, listen, that's probably not, you're not going to get asked that question, Mitch. And you got to understand too, that people want to do business with people they know, like, and trust. You've been in law enforcement. You've been, you're on the Ace Hardware in a small community. People already know, like, and trust you. So that right there changed my mental, outlook on real estate. And from then on, I mean, I just had a lot more confidence in myself and just moved forward and, didn't look back. So I think a lot of it was just mental, just understanding, that, and, having confidence in yourself. That's the main thing.
I love that you brought that up. So many of my students have these discussions with me about, they're a couple months in with their license. They sort of feel like that imposter syndrome, that phony syndrome. They're still learning how to fill out the contracts. They're worried about what you said. People saying, have you ever done a deal before? But again, as you probably realized, and your broker was right, people don't really ask that. And no matter what career you're in, as you learn and you grow, there is a portion of you that has to fake it till you make it and believe in yourself. And obviously you're proof that that's all that you have to do. You have to push aside those sort of negative, that negative self-talk. And it sounds like you overcame that challenge very well. And now if the people ask you, have you sold anything? Yes, you have.
That's right.
So, Mitch, how'd you market yourself as a new agent? Like, how'd you get yourself out there? Our audience is listening. They hear your success. Like, how'd you do it? How'd you establish yourself? What marketing or social media? Or let's start there.
Yeah, so I love to answer this question when I get asked that. So I have to go back to my wife. She is like a social media guru. Whenever I got into this, I knew that I was going to have to change how I did things. I've always been that I don't want no recognition, don't want no attention, just I'll sit in the background and support somebody else. But I knew for me to be successful, I've got to put myself out there. And so I went and made a Facebook page for myself, business page. And I started just posting real estate stuff, boring stuff. Nobody cares about, posting little templates about, the market. People don't read that stuff. But I was posting that, and my wife was like, I'm fixing to take over your account because it's terrible. And so she did. And man, when she did it, it just took off. And so how we did that, or how she did that, she would post like a lot on our personal page. Because that's what really people look at, is your personal page.
Sure.
You got to have a business page, but your personal page is what people are looking at. So what she would do, like if we were going out on a date, if we were going to church, if we were going to a listing presentation, she was doing videos or just taking pictures of us and posting what we were doing. And that was like the coolest thing, because then what would happen is that one thing, our audience started expanding. I would be going somewhere that, somewhere out in public, and somebody would stop me, but hey, you're that realtor. And I'm like, yeah, and we'd talk a little bit, and I'm like, I don't even know who this person is, So my name started really getting out there. And then when I was going on listing presentations, I'd open my book like we've all done and start going through stuff. And they're like, no. I'm going to list with you, Mitch. I just kind of want to know what you think about the property, what they need to do, because they had already connected with me through Facebook. They already knew who I was. They already developed that know, like, and trust. So they were like ready to sign. They were just like, let's talk about the property and we'll sign it here in just a minute, So that's how we really done it, is everything's been through social media.
That's great. Did you purchase leads? Were you given leads outside of that, or was it really just organic from your social media?
99% of it is organic through social media and my family and friends. Yep.
That's amazing. So cool. So did you target a specific audience or clientele, or was it just whoever was following you?
Whoever was following me. Yeah, I didn't target anybody. The way I look at it is, if they've got something to sell or they're looking to buy it, I never looked at it for price or how much money I was going to make. I just looked at it. They needed some assistance. They were calling me, and I was there to help them. That's great.
And did you do open houses and stuff like that?
So, I think that's a very good question. Open houses, I've done some of those. I have not had much success with them.
Okay.
I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and he was telling me, you got to have a different mindset on what you're trying to do with the open house. And so I will be doing more in the future. But I just had to have a different little mind shift on how to look at open houses.
Yeah. Well, I've heard about your mind shifts before, and they seem to be successful. So my gut says they'll work for you. So one more thing I want to ask. How did you build relationships with your clients? Like now somebody comes up to you, you don't know who they are, but they sure know who you are. How'd you build that relationship, and how'd you maintain relationships?
I think the easiest thing that I've done is that I just, new customer, I just take the time to get to know their why. Why are you selling? Why are you buying? I get people all the time ask me, hey, Mitch, is it a good time to sell? Is it a good time to buy? And I say, well, it depends on what your motivation is. Why are you wanting to sell? Why are you wanting to buy? And then that always helped me understand, where they're coming from, where they're going, why they're trying to get there, and to help me guide them on the process. So long as I can know their why, I've been successful to help them find a place or sell their home.
I think that's so important, the why. A lot of real estate transactions are driven by emotion with buyers and sellers. And so I 100% agree that the why is one of the most important things. Before I ask my next question, I just want to say that I love the way that you talk about your wife. And I think she's probably the best. And I can't wait for her to watch this and hear, she can hear you say all these wonderful things about her. So in particular, is there a story about a client that you think you want to share because it's entertaining or a good lesson that you learned for anybody that wants to get into real estate, that, a story that you think would be, entertaining or interesting to somebody who wants to get into this career?
Yeah. So yes, there was a lady that approached me one time, and this goes back to the one belief that I have, and my former coach, he really pushed this into me. He's like, do not chase the money, Mitch. Do not chase the money. The big dollars will come, but if you get into it chasing the money, people will see through that and they won't want to use you. So I had a lady approach me, and she was like, Mitch, I need some help. I've got my sister's passed away. She left the property to me and my other sister and my brother, and our brother lives on it, and we need to divide it up and sell that property. And so, I didn't think I was going to make a whole lot of money off of it. It wasn't going to be a high dollar property, but it didn't matter. So we went through the process. We met with county officials. We met with a survey company. I was all with her through every step of the way, in person meeting. And we ended up selling that property like $10,000. I made maybe a couple $100 off of it. So obviously my per hour rate was like really low, but that wasn't the point. The point was this lady called me and needed some help. And now, through her, if I need somebody to vouch for me, because she told me, she said, Mitch, I cannot get anybody else to help me, because she wasn't from here. She was from somewhere else. So she reached out. Nobody would give her the time of day. And so now if I need somebody to vouch for me, all I have to do is call her up. And, she's going to be a big advocacy for me, because I took the time to do that. And it wasn't about the money. Like I said, I don't chase the money. I'll tell anybody, you start chasing the money, you're gonna fail. That's not a good way to do it. So,
amazing advice, honestly. This next question is not the easiest, but where do you think you'll be in 5 years with this career?
Oh, so the other day I had that question asked, and I was like, I've got to really start thinking about that, because, I'm just kind of going along, just selling and selling. I said, I got to start putting a plan in place. So one thing that I'd like to do is that, because we have been successful, we've been putting a lot of, just stocking money back, saving it, we're not big spenders, but I would like to have 4 or 5 rentals purchased, with cash, have that. My daughter just got her license. She's 22 years old. And so I also have a team. And I got some awesome ladies on there that work with me. I mean, I'm totally outnumbered when it comes to male and female. So, but they are some wonderful ladies I have on my team. But I'd love to see Maddie within 5 years kind of taking a lead role, in the team. And, and then I would love to see my team up here in the Panhandle as a name, a top producing team up here in the Panhandle. So that's kind of where I'd like to see myself in 5 years.
I love that. Do you have any tips or tricks that you want to share with anybody that is coming in and is new?
So, I would say definitely be yourself. Now that doesn't mean that we don't evolve and change, over time. Because like I said, I've always been a quiet person. 5 years ago, you wouldn't have had me on this show. I've been like, yeah, I'm not doing that. So you've got to put yourself out there. You cannot be afraid to fail. I listened to a gentleman, I cannot remember his name, but he gave a speech on, or a talk on chasing failure. And that really stood out to me. So I'm like, be yourself and do not be afraid to fail. Chase failure. If you catch it, all right, well, just back up and go a different direction, but you're never going to get anywhere just sitting there. When it comes to, brokers and mentors, I think there's a broker out there for everybody. Find a place that you feel comfortable and they're going to give you guidance on. And then at the end of the day, just get out there and do it. Just like Nike, just do it, because you're not going to learn just sitting here behind the screen and somebody telling you how to do it. You just got to go out there and do it and learn, on job training. So that's my best advice.
That's great advice. And just to piggyback that real quick, you mentioned earlier hiring a coach pretty early on in your real estate career and that really having an impact. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that? And would you recommend that for new agents?
I highly recommend that. When I first got into it, I heard about people having coaches. I'm like, what are they talking about? Why you need a coach? I didn't understand. But as I started progressing, I realized having a coach, mentor, somebody that's got years of experience that can speak into your life, and it's not that they're going to tell you some kind of, magical potion to do something. I mean, a lot of stuff you already know, but you just need somebody to hold you accountable to get it done, But, so I highly encourage people, to do that because they'll help you see the world through a real estate lens than what you normally see it from. I highly encourage for somebody to get a mentor or a coach or somebody that will speak into their life about real estate. And
tell you you're going to make a 6-figure income your first year. So you go do it. So you go do it. That's great. So Mitch, we're going to jump into a lightning round, just some fun stuff about you that I'll ask you a question. Give me your immediate answer, 60 seconds or less.
Okay.
Do you have a book or a podcast that you've read or listened to that you'd recommend for the audience?
So I do have a book. It's the Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I highly recommend his book.
And tell us why, just a quick sentence as to why.
Yeah. So, coming from law enforcement, I mean, I knew about negotiations. I knew about things like that. I've had training and all that, but it was just it was really a good book to reinforce a lot of things. I mean, it really went into a lot of details just about negotiations, how people think, when they're in negotiations, not just you, but the other person. Yeah. And so it brings a lot of light to that. So I highly suggest that book.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So next one, if we had a time machine and you could go back to the day you started this journey, what might you do different and why?
Oh, man. If I went back, I would tell myself, again, like I said earlier, a new agent, don't be afraid to fail. Mitch, you're going to go out there, you're going to make some mistakes. I've yet to make a mistake that cannot be corrected, in real estate. This is not law enforcement, life or death. We're just marketing and selling real estate, So I would tell myself, do not be afraid to fail. You're going to make mistakes, but you're going to be all right.
Yeah. So true. And so many people getting started, that's their biggest fear. So that's great. If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
So I have to say it's two people. Okay. I would have to say my dad and my granddad. My granddad is off my mother's side, and then of course I have my dad. Both of them, they loved real estate, but for two different reasons. My granddad, he loved real estate and acquiring it because he just loved land. Vacant land was his thing. He'd put cows, hay, stuff that was his thing. He drove down every day, looked at it, and he just enjoyed it. my dad saw an opportunity where he would see a bunch of vacant land, 20 acres, be like, I bet I can do something with that. And he would buy it, develop it, build homes on it, and flip it. And now that was not his, his main income. I mean, he was a manager of a timber company, but that's what he did on the side. That was his kind of hobby and his passion. So, now I look back and I'm like, wow, that's pretty cool. I come from two different people that had two different outlooks on real estate, and then here I am selling this.
They sound like wonderful individuals, and that would be a great fun dinner for sure. Sure. What did you do at work yesterday?
Oh, typical real estate stuff. I after I got up yesterday morning, I started making my phone calls with my past customers and reaching out to some current customers. And then I was supposed to have a closing yesterday. You know how that goes. We were scheduled to close yesterday afternoon, and then all of a sudden I get a phone call and things are starting to unravel, and like, what in the world is going on here? And so we were able to, after some phone calls, we were able to keep it going and get to the closing table. But, typical real estate.
That's good. It's keeping you busy. It's right. You're doing good things. Good things. So where can listeners connect with you or follow your journey?
Yeah, so they could find me, obviously, my website, hudsonwillisgroup.com. They can find me on my Facebook page. My personal is Willis Bitch Heather, and then my business is Hudson Willis Group /LPT Realty. So they can find me there.
Perfect.
Well, thank you so much, Mitch, for spending time with us today and sharing your journey, your advice. I can tell that you have a lot of heart, and I think that is a special ingredient for anybody working in real estate. I know your story is going to inspire those interested in starting a career in real estate and anybody that's wanting to get that career launched. So thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, I appreciate the invite. And anybody out there that's looking, to get in real estate and want to just talk, I'll talk your ear off about it because I love it. So yeah, anybody out there listening want to talk, give me a call and or log on to my website. All my information is there, and be glad to schedule a call and talk with you.
Thanks for listening to Unlocking Real Estate, My First Commission. We hope today's stories and insights gave you that extra spark to keep moving forward in your real estate career. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps us reach more listeners like you. And don't forget you can watch this or other episodes on our YouTube channel. We'd also love to hear from you. Send your comments, key takeaways, or recommendations for future guests to unlockingrealestate@colibrirealestate.com.